Hi, I'm Denise Peck, and today's lesson is all about basic wire jewelry making. And you're going to learn in this DVD how to make all the beautiful projects, including these necklaces, these beautiful bracelets and earrings. You'll learn how to make your own findings, head pins, ear wires, links, charms, everything you need to know to make beautiful wire jewelry. So let's talk about the wire that's on the market and the options you have for when you make your jewelry. Lots of people started out in sterling when sterling was affordable, and that suddenly became not the case anymore. And so a lot of alternatives popped up. And the popularity of copper is huge because of the price point, the low price point on copper. And it makes beautiful jewelry. There's also now a silver wire that you can buy called German silver, and it is basically copper covered in a thin coat of silver. And so you can do anything you can with sterling. You can oxidize it and get a nice finish on it, but it's very inexpensive. There's gold filled, there's steel. Steel has become very popular. It's a real earthy, organic look. And aluminum, which is very lightweight and easy to work with and comes in beautiful colors. And craft wire, which also comes in a huge array of colors and is soft and easy to manipulate. And all wire has temper properties. That's the stiffness of it. And when you buy it, you should ask for the stiffness that you're looking for the piece that you're going to make. And there are some general rules about that. Like if you want to make ear wires and they should remain stiff, you should buy a half-hard wire so that it keeps some spring and stiffness. But if you're going to do a lot of manipulating of wire, like knitting or crocheting or weaving, you want to get a soft wire, because every single wire that you work with tools, any manipulation you do with tools, the wire becomes stiffer and stiffer and more brittle. In some cases, you can use that to your advantage. In some cases, it can go too far and your wire can snap. So you always have to keep in mind that when you're working with wire, it's stiffening every time you manipulate it. Wire also comes in several different shapes. And the most standard that people use in making jewelry is round wire, clearly. But there is a whole traditional kind of wire wrapping that uses square wire. It's a little hard to identify by itself, but it has edges and corners, and it gives a very different look when you're finished with your jewelry piece. Wire comes in several different gauges, many different gauges actually, and they are identified by numbers, 18 gauge, 20 gauge, and the higher the number, the skinnier the wire. The lower the number, the thicker the wire. So this is 18 gauge, it's fairly thick, and this is probably about a 12 gauge. And if you're ever wondering what gauge wire you've picked up, there's a handy tool called a wire gauge that measures that for you. And it's a funny little tool. It looks like you want to stick the wire into the holes, but in fact the holes are irrelevant. You're looking for the edge to slip your wire into. So I'm going to slip this into about 14 gauge. 13 is too big, 16 fits, 17 is too small. So we know this is 16 gauge. And so anytime you have a question about what gauge wire you've just picked up, you can always find out by picking up your wire gauge. Here's a very thin gauge. It's probably about 20 or 22. You can see the little slots get thinner and thinner. It's not 26, it's not 20, it's a little too thick for 24, it's 22 gauge. It fits right into that slot. The other basic tools you need when you get started working with wire is a set of good pliers, and primarily round nose flat nose, chain nose. This is chain nose, the most ubiquitous tool that you use when you're working with wire. Flat nose gives you really nice 90-degree bends, and round nose gives you those perfect loops that you always want in your work. And a ruler to measure, of course, and your wire snips. These are called flush cutters. You can buy all kinds of wire cutters in the hardware store, and they will give you a pretty rough cut. So you should buy specifically jewelry wire cutters called flush cutters, and when you use these, they leave a very nice flat end, which is what you're always looking for when you're making jewelry. The other essential tools you'll find when you're working with wire is a whole selection of mandrels, and those are anything you can bend your wire over and make into nice shapes. For instance, a standard Sharpie is the perfect size to make an ear wire, so that's always good to have on hand. When you're making larger loops, a ring mandrel is handy, and of course if you're making rings you have to have a ring mandrel, and it has the sizes printed right down the side. And then there are some really funny little household things you might find turn out to be great mandrels. This is a carpenter's pencil, and when you wrap wire around this, it gives you a really nice oval shape. These are mandrels you can buy specifically for wire working. You can see they're stepped, so you can make smaller loops here and fatter loops here and even tinier ones on that. So you'll find a whole bunch of mandrels that you like yourself when you're working in wire, and have them around the whole time. The other series of tools that you'll absolutely want to work with are texturing tools to get really nice varying textures in your metal when you're hammering it. And the most important thing that you need to buy is a bench block, because you want to do your hammering right on this steel bench block. It really makes the impression stick in your wire because of the hardness of the bench block. And a ball peen hammer is your very basic hammer. This you do a lot of different techniques with, using the front for flattening and the ball part for texturing. It's a very handy tool. But there's an array of specialty texturing tools on the market as well. Hammers have become the rage, and many companies make specialty texturing hammers that create lines or create dots or create a crosshatch pattern. This side looks like it's a rain pattern. Some of them, they're even called rain, and raindrops and window pane, and they're beautiful. They're really fun to use with your wire. This is a rawhide mallet, and a rawhide mallet is used not for texturing per se, but for flattening your wire out again if it gets misshapen while you're texturing. The benefit of a rawhide hammer is that it does not give you texture. It just flattens your wire out again. So you have to have a rawhide hammer on hand. And then piercing is key, and there are several ways to pierce your wire. There are special tools that punch holes in specific diameters, and then a standard awl I use all the time with my ball peen hammer to punch holes in my wire. And this bench block, actually the back of it is wood, which is very handy, and I use the wood part with the awl and the hammer to punch holes in my wire. And this is a really fun part of working with wire, because you can get a whole range of looks from the different texturing tools.